Good morning to everyone that follows Unfiltered Leadership. We want to thank everyone for joining us today. And we're honored today to be able to discuss some great issues and some great topics with the 11th Air Force Command Chief. Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to introduce Chief Master Sergeant Dave Wolfe. Chief, thanks for joining us today, sir.
Hey, thanks a lot, Kalen, and it's great to be with you guys today. I really like the name that you guys chose for your podcast. I think that's exactly what folks are looking for. They're looking for real answers to real problems, and Unfiltered is exactly the right tone for that. So, just introduce myself a little bit for those folks that I haven't had the pleasure to meet. It's a small Air Force, but you never know how many paths you crossed or not. I grew up as a security forces guy. Did a little time in teaching PME. I got to go back and be a commandant of the same PME center that I taught at, which was a fantastic opportunity. And then I got on this command chief's gig track about 4.5 years ago. And here I am in Alaska at the, like you said, 11th Air Force, but that's actually the third hat that my boss wears and that we lead. So we lead the Alaska NORAD region, which is a binational command partnership with Canada, protecting the airspace of all of Alaska and Canada. Also Alaskan Command, which is a sub-unified command, a joint sub-unified command under U.S. NORTHCOM. So under both of those hats, we report to NORAD and NORTHCOM, General O'Shaughnessy and Lieutenant General Coates as the NORAD deputy. And then 11th Air Force, which is all of the air forces in Alaska, Hawaii, and Guam. So that's 5 wings stretching out from up north where you guys are all the way down to Guam and also out to Singapore and Diego Garcia. So we have the largest geographic NAF in the whole Air Force. We also have the only overseas joint bases in the Air Force fall under 11th Air Force in JBER, Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam, and then Joint Region Marianas down there in Guam. So it's an interesting command. It's been a great career for me. I'm super excited to be here with you guys today and to talk about whatever's on your mind and get some thoughts out there and maybe help some people think about some problems in a different way.
Awesome. Hey, Chief, you're our first guest. We wanted to wait until we had a well-established podcast, thousands of followers. So episode 2, I think we're there. It's time to bring you on. We initially on our dry race board, when we were planning on what topic would be good for you, we thought connection would be real good. But then we started to go kind of think about all the teams you've led. And we wanted to talk about the difference between great teams and bad teams. And then Kalen shot us a message and said, hey, you wanted to change the name from great teams and bad teams to the difference between great teams and good teams. Can you give us just a little context on just that? What's the difference in just that messaging?
Yeah, so I think we've all walked into a situation before at a new job where you walk in and you get a vibe right off the bat that things are not good. Like you can figure out a bad, toxic work environment in 5 seconds sometimes, right? You can just walk in and feel it. In my experience, it doesn't take a whole lot of amazing leadership concepts or attributes to kind of help an environment like that, right? Really all you have to do is listen to somebody, maybe help, one person and then, kind of take it from there. It's kind of easy to do that stuff. I mean, there may be some deep-rooted hard problems to fix that you may uncover eventually. But the real kind of art of leadership is taking a team that's doing well, but has more potential, and then trying to convince everybody that good isn't good enough, and that we need to kind of take this to the next level, and then trying to work with everybody to try to get on that. I mean, think about just in your own personal life. when things are going well for you, how easy is it for you to get motivated to like take things to the next level in your physical fitness, in your relationship, in whatever? That going from bad to good is a lot easier than going from good to great, and really getting that team or that situation firing on all cylinders. So that was my thought process on that.
That's a great, yeah. And one thing I thought about while you're talking about getting to good, and then the difference between getting from good to great is how many people are playing some level of football versus how many people are playing in the NFL, or how many people are running some sort of track and field event, but how many people are getting to the Olympics. That, the kind of the pyramid gets a lot smaller at the top. So absolutely, I think that's absolutely true.
Chief, I have a question for you. So you kind of brought up toxicity awareness, being able to step into an organization within a matter of minutes or days and kind of know, like, there are some problems that exist that I'm going to have to dive into, and we're going to have to kind of hunt some solutions here. Looking on the opposite spectrum, though, have you ever worked with a team, a unit, a small group that at what point in time did you find, man, you defined then, this is a great team. This is a high-performing, synchronized team. Did you, whoever or whatever that team was, did you realize that after the fact or during that harmony with that team, did you know then, like, this, I am part of something huge with this team right now. This is an amazing team. Can you share a little bit of that?
Yeah. So, I mean, all this stuff is very, it's squishy, right? It's not concrete. You can't, we teach a lot of leadership concepts in all of our levels of PME, and you can see kind of the build or the destruction of, depending on which way it's going with a group of people. But what it comes down to is, what are you using to define what success looks like? To me, I think a lot of leaders get caught up in, a specific outcome or a specific thing that needs to be done. Anybody can kind of drive the initiatives and the mission of an organization based on their experiences and their know-how and their operational expertise, just by saying, hey, this is what we're going to do and this is how we're going to do it, and you guys are going to kind of fall in line. It's really when you allow the group to figure those things out, the how of it, and let them run with it, where you really get to start to see where you are as a team. Because I know I have been in situations where we felt that, like, we were doing really, really well, and then somebody left, a leader left on the team, somebody who was really important to our success, and the whole thing fell apart, right? And we weren't able to kind of keep things going because we didn't, as a team, come together and do that. So really, I think you have to make sure that the people on the team are invested in what's going on, and they can't do that with a top-down driven, kind of a philosophy. So the teams that I've walked into where I knew I was part of something special right up front, the people were running the show. It wasn't this one leader that was, usually that doesn't last. It can be good for short spurts, and it can certainly, a leader can make a huge difference in the tone and the tenor of an organization. But it's when you've got multiple people on the team that are working together to get to that, whatever success looks like.
Did you pause, or did we lose you? I think, Chief, we lost you for a minute, but when you were talking, I was thinking of this notion of compliance versus commitment. And as a leader, especially with positional power, like, super easy to get compliance. You can go in there and say, you will do X, Y, and Z. And like you said, when the boss pulls out and he's only bred compliance, they're going to stop doing the thing, because that's what I was just doing that because he was telling me to do it. I'm not doing that anymore. That's dumb. But if great teams are committed, every person in the team is committed to doing what they're doing, and they're doing it, like you said, for other reasons, for the right reasons. So when the boss pulls out, they're still doing it because what they were doing it for is still there. It still matters because it was intrinsic, or or it was the vision, or whatever the case may be. But that whole notion of compliance versus commitment, I think, is absolutely.
I was curious to think, as Senior Hammer who's chatting, talking about buy-in and accountability is a big thing, as well as holding each other accountable on a team. And then also be accountable for results. So as the leader, I think it's critical and vital that as the leader of a group or an organization, that when things go wrong, you should be the one raising your hand. Like, I may have dropped the ball here, or I did drop the ball. What are your thoughts on that aspect, Chief, of being, having that onus, or owning the process or the piece that may have failed on a team, or didn't succeed quite as well as we thought it may have?
Yeah, so I think that ties in really well with the culture of the team. The times where people will step up and take accountability for what's going on are probably directly correlated to how safe they feel in that environment to be able to fail, right? There's environments that I've been in before where, man, you don't make mistakes. You don't put that out there. And in fact, if something does go wrong, you either scramble to make sure the boss doesn't find out about it and it gets fixed before it rises to their level. Or, you all get together and figure out how to make that problem go away before somebody finds out about it. Right. I mean, that's the fear, part of it. It's a super heavy driver for folks. People are, inspirational is great. Getting all the, the kind of the stick and the carrots out there where you're trying to get people to buy in on that is great. But the biggest motivator at the end of the day for a human being is going to be fear. Get that fight or flight, and you're going to react one way or the other. If you're in an environment where you're being taught through the actions and the situations that are going on in your unit that mistakes aren't okay, then you're probably going to be a lot less susceptible to or able to step up and take accountability. So that's an environment. To me, it's about environment. If your environment isn't such that you can walk into your boss and say, "Hey, I screwed this up, and here's what happened, and here's here are the circumstances surrounding it, and here's what I'm doing to make sure it doesn't happen again." Your boss has got to, you as the leader, you have to give your people space to do that. I made a mistake when I was a young staff sergeant working in a Stanaval section, and it was a pretty what I thought at the time, like, catastrophic type operational mistake with how we tracked whether or not our people were certified to do their jobs. And it was an honest mistake, but it was a big deal, right? Like, it really was a kind of a mistake of omission. But I was taking it super hard. And at the time, I was working for a great chief, and he pulled me in his office, and I was kind of, tail between my legs. I was like, this is it, I'm getting fired, and this is going to be terrible. And all he said to me was, "If you're not making mistakes, I know that you're not trying very hard. So get out and go fix it." And I was like, wow, okay, that, and I'll never forget that. That was one of those kind of moments where, he gave me the space to make that mistake. He wasn't happy about it. He didn't say it with a big smile on his face and giving me a hug. I mean, he was pretty pissed about it, but he basically gave me the space to make that mistake and didn't make such a big deal out of it that it ended up, crushing us. And we all learned from it. And there were a ton of circumstances surrounding that situation where I wasn't the only one, that had an issue with that. It was years of that mistake being made, and kind of that squadron lore kind of a mistake. You ever find those before, where it's a policy or a procedure that you're using, and the guy before you told you how to do it, but it was wrong, and you just kind of perpetuated that same bad habit or bad read on a policy. But I was able to take ownership of it and move on and not get crushed for it. So I think that's all about environment. It's got to be about the environment.
Environment and culture. That's that's gonna be one of the biggest things to assess and to look at. Chief, let's I'd like to bring something to you. I want to aim into talking about the journey of going from good to great. And being a team member, sometimes I think a lot of passionate, young, knowledgeable leaders that have a lot of good awareness of who their team is, how their team is performing. I think a lot of times there are leaders, or there's young airmen that maybe they want their whole team to move forward, but there's a barrier. There's something that's existing where they know that people and the team cohesively can push, and they can do unbelievable things and embark on new territories, just like what we talked about last week. But there's something that's there. There's something that's stopping the whole team. There's barriers maybe in communication, trust, so on. What is your insight or maybe experience that you've ever had of trying to get a group of people to move from good to great?
So I don't know that there's a list of things that you can do, or a checklist that you can go to that would give you the answer to that question, because it's so different for every organization that you're going to be in. That I think that the talent or the art, like I said before, of leadership is to be able to go in and figure out where people are and where the organization is, and then maybe take it one step further, right? Just try to do one thing first, because I know in my career, when I've had leaders say, hey, here's what we're going to do, and here's how we're going to do it, and here's what I need you guys to think about, give me some feedback on how we can make this happen. And then, if we were involved in the process, if we got that win, man, how much more confidence did I then have in that person the next time that they brought, something to the table about that. So it's about small wins. I'll give you an example. I love me some football, right? And I love, I've spent a lot of my career off duty time doing some youth football coaching. In fact, I had the pleasure of starting a whole franchise in a league here in Alaska a number of years ago, but I'm not a football coach. Like, I do not know the X's and the O's very well. I never played football in high school or any other time. I just love the sport. I love to watch it. And so I love to get involved in this organization. But one year I ended up having to coach a team myself. Our first scrimmage, we couldn't even get the snap. We couldn't even snap the ball to start the play on offense. By our first game, we had the snap down, but we couldn't get a first down. So after the first game, I was like, hey guys, check. Sorry about that. Did I cut out for a second there? My bad.
Just for 2 seconds, sir. It's all good. You were talking about the snap.
Yeah. So our goal in the first game was, hey, let's get a first down. Let's try to get one first down. That was our goal. And man, when we got that first down, those kids were ecstatic that we got a first down, right? And then, a couple of games later, we upped it. Okay, so next game, let's try to get 2 or 3 first downs, get a drive going, you get some consecutive first downs. And then, by the 4th or 5th game, it was, hey, let's try to score, and we did. Eventually we scored a touchdown on offense. And those kids, they were learning all along the way. Every team is the same. Where are they? What are you trying to do next? what's the next level you're trying to get to, and doing that evaluation and then involving the people in the solutions that you're trying to come up with. It's all the same process. I think what you're talking about, Kalen, is it's really hard not to be frustrated when you see potential or you see the ability and you see the possibilities that maybe other people don't see, and then you can't figure out how to get people going in that direction. You got to take the basic steps and evaluate as you're going and involve the people in the process, and eventually you'll start to get momentum, and eventually they'll start to run away from you on their own. And then all you're doing is to use a cop term, you're doing limiting stakes, right? All you're doing is saying, all right, here, let's just try to stay in this lane as we move on, and we'll be just fine.
I think back to Chris's question about ownership, and then your thoughts, Chief, on culture. And you mentioned like maybe the culture isn't set up to support you saying, hey, I screwed that up, or recognize failure at all. And sometimes it's covert and it's not intended. And that always reminds me of the importance of these micro communications and how they can bring a team from good to great. And when I think about things to get after, and the thing we do the most every day is when there's collisions between people and we just have a quick water cooler talk. That's happening hundreds of times a day throughout a unit, times 365. So you've got thousands and thousands of those. And if great teams are hyper aware of just the language that they use, and to your notion in the beginning that like just going in and not being a jerk, like just going into a team, not being a jerk can get you to good. But then to squeeze that last little bit of performance out, it's about just kind of recognize, like in the POL career field, one kind of way we would show affection for each other is like, hey, you jerk, what did you do this weekend? Your football team sucks. And there would be this language. And when you look at going to great, like maybe that language changes a little bit to like, hey man, what's going on? How's the family? Instead of just, hey, you jerk, like, that you're still driving that crappy Ford or whatever. And like all those on the surface, those appear to be okay, but you can get some performance out if you're just hyper aware of how you're communicating, the words you're using to show appreciation to people, things like that. I think that's crucial.
Absolutely. There's a definitely, we're hard on each other, right? I mean, that's all there is to it. And a lot of these things happen because we say things that we're just not thinking about the consequences of the circumstances. You may give me a hard time about something that that I care about, and it's just not the right time, right? Like I'm not feeling it. There's something else going on that you don't know about that's got me distracted or thinking about something, and just that little communication that we would have could kind of sour things between us for a short time or maybe even a long period of time. Who knows? So yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think there's all kinds of room for discussions like that right now with world events and everything that's going on in our country. And it's definitely an interesting topic to explore for sure.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So in line with that exact same topic with world events and things that are going on in the United States. And so I was writing down ideas and thoughts of, what is my vision or what is my thought process on a high performing team. And I don't want to say number one, but at the top of my list was mutual respect for each other, for one another, and then trust. I think those two tie into each other. What are your thoughts on when there's a lack of trust and maybe a lack of mutual respect, or when those things are in line and you do have that cohesiveness with the team as far as respect and trust go?
Yeah. So, I mean, the basis of everything in organization is trust. I mean, there's no starting anything if that's not there, because anything that you do when you have a lack of trust and organization is going to be put into a category of, people are going to think you're disingenuous. They're not going to believe what you're saying, and based on the fact that they don't value your inputs, because they don't have that foundation. So if you start from there, let's just talk about example, our personnel system, and how we move people around. If we started with a philosophy of every airman should be able to do what they want to do for a job and location, wouldn't that be an awesome way to start? What would that communicate to our people? Now, everybody knows that that's not a plausible goal for every single person. But what if we started with that premise with every assignment and job move that we had to do with people? People would be on board, because really at the end of the day, your folks really just want to know that you're trying to help them, right? I mean, everybody knows we can't fix every problem and do every policy doesn't play out the same everywhere you go, right? Everybody knows that stuff exists. But what if we just started from a position of, the needs of the Air Force come first? You ever heard that before?
Sure.
Now, what are the needs of the Air Force? Where's that list where I can see what the Air Force needs? Would like to know where that's at, right? I mean, that's almost we should never say that again. That should never be a going in position on something. The mission always comes first. That's another one, right? Those are not trust building philosophies or words, right? Those are ones that basically tell people you're not important enough for us to really care about what you're doing. And most people use it as an excuse just to not help people at the end of the day if they don't think they can get something done. So yeah, trust in the individual that you're with, trust in the institution. All those things are unbelievably important.
Yeah, maybe I'm hyper aware of language just because I recently read a book called Leadership is Language. But what you're saying, for a small team perspective, maybe things I communicate when an airman comes and says, "Hey boss, can we look at a humanitarian or something?" And I say, "Well, let me look at what the Air Force needs, and then we'll figure out." Even though my intention might be to take care of that airman, what I'm saying to them through my language is, "I don't give a crap about you. You're second to the Air Force." Instead of maybe switching that language to, "Man, yeah, absolutely. What do you need? What do you want? Let me see what we can do for you." And it might not turn out to be, what they need in the end, but just that language, what does it say? And you even said, right, that language is not trust building language. So on a micro level, multiplied by 1,000 times over the course of whatever, that says something across the board on the culture of that team, for sure. I thought one thing I was thinking about when I was thinking about teams between great and good, which I think is super relevant to the currently what's going on with the racism, and as a team, we talked before, just for the listener and the viewer now, we talked about maybe it would be a disservice not to get into this currently with what's going on, but I think great teams have figured out how to better share power, and power in the idea of asymmetrical control over valuable resources. If I have control over whether it be time or whatever, power in that respect, I've seen great teams that figured out how to better communicate where power is and better share power to the extent that they can. I mean, obviously within the constructs of the military, there are some things that have to be done by certain people, but what's wrong with letting the airmen, to your point, kind of Chief, have power over the duty schedule, right? Instead of the supervisor holding on to those resources and going, "Those are mine," right? What's wrong with looking at how power is distributed in that respect and sharing that as best as they can? I think great teams have figured that out.
Empowerment. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. To the word empowerment. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what the word means. It means, it doesn't mean that I'm going to let you feel like you've got some. It literally means I'm going to give it away to you. It means that I'm going to give you the authority, the responsibility, and the accountability to do whatever it is that we're talking about doing. So, yeah, absolutely. And that, I think people want to be heard, and they want to have, the same opportunity to do the things that are available to them. And when there's a sense that that's not happening, you get unhappy people, and you get behaviors that you probably don't want to have in your organization, that you don't want to deal with. But we have to. We got to face those things and figure out why those things are happening, and then try to do something about it.
So, right now with everything kind of going on, I think everyone has taken the past week to really reflect on personal accountability, communication, relationships, the future. I think the brave leaders we have in our Air Force that have really made some incredible comments and some incredible discussions over the past couple of days have taken, we're hitting a new horizon, right? We're hitting a new territory of new things happening. And I'm looking at this overall picture of this discussion that's happening in the nation right now. And I'm trying to, I think there's a relation to our topic of good teams versus great teams, because right now I view the Air Force as an unbelievably strong engine running, of course. I think we all at this table agree with that. But I look at this scenario and knowing that our leaders have 100%, come forward and said that, there are problems within our Air Force. There are things that we need to fix. Now I feel that there is a movement of the Air Force going from a good team to a great team. And even though, of course, I'm not saying that we're just a good team. Of course, we're a superior engine. But I think we are moving to grow so much stronger because we're addressing something. We're empowering discussion. We're empowering commanders to have confrontational discussions and hard topics. And now I feel that we're really defining, as an Air Force and as a culture and as an institution, going to a great team. And I'm really excited to see, what the next decade of my Air Force is going to be and how to be in it. And I would assume you as well, Chief, with all your wisdom and the years that you've had in, I can't imagine speaking on this topic. I can't imagine probably what it was like for you, when you first came in, this specific topic on racism and the discussion there, like the difference of how you've probably seen it over the past couple of decades. And I'm really excited to see where we're going. And I think we all have a part in it, of course, but I think we're moving to be an even stronger, great team very soon.
Yeah. So I think here's what I'm hearing our leaders say. And I'm glad they're doing it. But this is not a new discussion, right? This is not something that's just popping up now, right? I'm not saying we've got all the answers and all of our stuff is straight in line with the way it needs to be. We absolutely have problems in our Air Force, and why is that? About half of our people are in their first term in the Air Force, right? So half of our people have not been fully kind of made aware of our value system and all that stuff. And then there's some people that have been in it for longer, and they haven't adapted either, right, to what our value system is. Here's my thoughts on the current situation. What we're talking about here is what I think is the single most important thing that you have to have in a high performing organization. And, if I asked you guys that question, if we were in a big audience, I would get a bunch of different answers. If I said, what do you have to have? What's the most important thing you have to have a high performing organization? What's that one thing you walk in the door and you don't really know what it is, but you can feel, that it's there. But some people say like morale. Some people will say it's esprit de corps. You got to have teamwork. You got to have And all those are absolutely critical and to a high performing organization. But the one thing that you absolutely have to have, and it's what we're talking about a lack of right now, is justice. And justice, I don't mean like the scales of justice and the punishments and stuff like that. What I'm talking about when I say justice is everyone has to have the same opportunity to become a master of their craft and what they do. And if there is even an underlying tone that there's favoritism, that the same people are getting the good opportunities, most people, if you guys probably all have had to take a bad deal in your career, right? Like something that, like whether it be a short notice deployment or just a job that nobody wanted to do and you had to end up taking it on, right? But you were probably okay with doing that as long as you felt like the bad deals were being spread kind of as evenly as possible amongst everybody else, right? If you continue to get the bad deal over and over, that's unjust, right? That's what people start to talk about fairness. Fairness is a squishy word, right? But justice is a little more concrete, right? You can kind of see that in what is happening. So really what we're talking about here is when you cross the threshold of your squadron, like when you guys walk into your building, wherever that is, you better be walking into a place where it's a meritocracy, where the opportunities are going to people, for training opportunities and schools and positions and all that stuff. The opportunity is equal across the board. Now, is everybody going to get the same, end result? No, that's not possible. That's not going to happen. But you have to have a situation where, I don't care what color you are. I don't care what your gender is. I don't care who you choose to love. I don't care what your, what part of the country you're from. All that stuff has to be cut out. And the more of it that leaks into the squadron across that threshold, then the further we've got to go, to try to fix that. So as long as we keep bringing in, folks from society, we're going to continue to have these problems, right? Because the problems, whatever society's problems are, become our problems. And we try to filter a bunch of it out through the recruiting process and everything else, but that stuff is still there. People have experiences that they bring in with them that cause them to feel ways about things that sometimes we don't even know about, which, makes it all that much more important to really get to know your folks and ask them the hard questions and have hard conversations with them and share with them about your experiences and what you've seen and what's happened to you that's leading you to behave the way you behave, because you've got something too, right? That you can shed and get rid of.
Yeah, and I think along that lines is when you come together, and I think this would really help us get after a lot of things, to include racism and discrimination, but also just getting after problems of non-discriminatory nature, was this notion of like dialogue versus discussion, and the word discussion meaning like coming from percussion, and there's a notion there that people approach discussion with an aim to win. Like I've already got my point of view and I'm just going in, and when I would leave that discussion, I want people to go, you're right. Versus dialogue is like this, like we just want to suspend our assumptions and not suspend them and put them away, but suspend them in front of everybody. Like, hey guys, this is where I'm coming from. These are my biases. These are my assumptions. And we're working together to go beyond just our individual understanding and get to a collective understanding of like where we're all at. And if we got better at that, like I suck at it, and I try to work on it, and it's super difficult, but it's worth getting after, because if we can approach discussions from a place of like starting with our biases, like, because like you said, we all got them, and the more they shape your decisions, the more dangerous it is. The more we can lay them out on the table and talk about them, and help each other understand them, I think we get to a better place immediately. So really how great teams approach discussions versus dialogue, and that's super critical to performance and stuff, essentially stuff like this. And if we had been doing that really well for a long time, not to say that we wouldn't have any of these issues, because you're always going to have some, I think, but we would be much closer to a place of not having as many.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's tough problems, but I don't know if you guys have been following some of the things testimonials that are getting posted out there, about like, hey, just tell us your story. Like, if you've experienced something like this, tell us what happened. Some of those are really hard to read.
Yeah.
And to think that people within our ranks have been exposed to some things like that without any accountability, right? I mean, quite honestly, human beings are human beings, and people have those things. They make mistakes. They say things they shouldn't say. That doesn't surprise me. What surprises me and sickens me, frankly, is when the story says, yeah, and my chief was standing right there and didn't say anything. My commander was standing right there and didn't say anything. That's where justice fails, right? You are the responsible party to say something if you hear it, and to correct it. And, that's the discussion that we've been having all along, but that we haven't really, obviously we haven't been able to do that in a meaningful way in every situation. So, if we start the kind of the Air Force discussion on these issues with, if you are known to be kind of letting something like this happen and you don't say anything about it, there's going to be consequences. There has to be. There absolutely has to be. If you're a commander or a chief or a senior NCO and you let something like that happen and you don't say anything about it, I'm not sure we need you anymore. We may need you to go do something else, and that has to be the position going in.
I had this exact scenario actually happen. Like, it's kind of ironic. Excuse me. It's kind of ironic, Chief, that you mentioned like that responsibility that key members of a unit kind of had. I had that exact thing happen actually just 2 years ago, and as firefighters and as cops, we run exercises, we do things, we sharpen our skills, we stay lethal in what we need to do, and we just constantly make sure that everyone is synchronized in our procedures. And just a couple years ago, we were running an exercise with my flight and doing a debriefing. It was the scenario of the exercise was a angry female that was coming up to our visitor control center to demand some orders from one of our cops. And it ended up, the scenario was that she was going to be violent. So it was an escalation and learning to de-escalate, but then learning actual apprehension techniques, so on. And at the debrief, when all was said and done, I had a member that was TDY here that was just backing us up in manpower, and he made a stereotype racial comment towards that female, and he was dead serious. And I watched her face. I just looked at her, and I could tell she immediately looked at me like, you better do something. And I didn't need her to look at me. I knew that I was going to say something because it was so out of line. But looking at her face, I could tell that she was uncomfortable because he outranked her. But I could tell that she was so scared to even stand up for herself. And it tore me up. And immediately right there, I had to be that one to make that decision and have that talk. And I had to talk with her privately. I had to pull him immediately out of the room. And then as a group, we had to come back and discuss what he had just said. And horribly like ethical dilemma, like
Sure.
tense scenario. But I think a new profound respect was made for a lot of people there. I think there was some eye-opening, come to Jesus moments for some people there, especially that member that made the comment. But Chief, I align with you, and I absolutely agree with you. If you are the one if you're the leader in that room, if you're the one that ranks, but more importantly, if you not even if you're the one that's
human being.
if you are just you know that you are just an influential person amongst people, right? You're kind of that guy that people stick to, that male or female, and something like that happens and you facilitate it, you just allow it, you are equally just as bad.
Yeah.
And
So let me ask you this, Kalen. How do we teach people how to do that? How do we practice that, and how do we teach people how to do what you did? You said you had a horrible ethical dilemma. I would beg to differ. There was no dilemma there, right? It was an ethical breach and an inappropriate comment, but you had no dilemma. There was no dilemma there at all whatsoever. The answer to what you should do is extremely easy. Doing it, on the other hand, is extremely difficult sometimes, right? For some folks. So how do you get better at, you said you were doing, use of force escalation, de-escalation. How do you get people better at that? You practice it, right?
Yeah, and that's
you do it over and over again until it just becomes normal memory, and that's how you do it, right? So how do we practice these things so that when, for me, I would like to think that all of my kids, and I have many, have made the decision before they are offered their first cigarette that they're not going to smoke. I hope. That's my strategy anyways, right? So we talk about that and we practice, kind of the thought process of, hey, I've already decided that that's not something I'm going to do. So I don't have to make a decision. There's no decision to make. It's just now execution, still hard, right? The actual saying no is still hard, but I've already made the decision in my mind. So how do we get people to make the decision in their mind that those things are inappropriate? And then how do we practice, getting them to a point where they're actually saying, hey, that ain't gonna fly. We gotta squash that right away, and then following up with it later.
Yeah, and if you're anything like me, you've had convictions seeing this stuff saying, man, I haven't done that enough. Like, I read Chief Wright's thing and it's like, hey, now is the time to take action. And although I don't think I've ever made any overtly discriminatory remarks, I don't think that I as a leader have done enough to build a culture where we've had those discussions prior to this time and period. So like it's I think in that, if you're I'm an optimistic person, and I'm a silver lining guy. Sometimes when people go, hey, are you a Monday morning guy? I go, or are you a morning guy? I go, no, I'm not really a morning guy. I'm a Monday morning guy. And they're like, oh, gross. But if anything, this has provided us an easy in to start those conversations before that event you're talking about, Kalen, happens. Like now, when it's on the TV in the break room, that's your icebreaker for how am I going to approach this awkward conversation? There it is. This is the time, I think. And so I've been self-convicted that I haven't done that as enough as a leader, but the silver lining is this has given me the freedom to start now.
I think something too is I think that the kind of going back to safety and culture, I think it will come in. I think those conversations and how we're doing it are going to become part of the absolute norm. Because, I mean, let's look at this month is Pride Month. We openly talk about the issues, the lifestyles, the support of homosexual airmen. And 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, you didn't talk about that. And we broke down incredible barriers to get to where our Air Force is now, and it happened through time. And that's why I think 10 years from now, the discussions that we're having right now, we're paving what the future of the Air Force looks like. And it's going to become, I mean, you could honestly see how it's probably in basic training there's going to be this discussion, the discussion of racism is going to happen harder in basic training and in work centers, in PME, everything. I mean, that PME, I can't imagine like that. It'll probably absolutely be embedded in that curriculum.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, it's not. We talk about culture quite a bit, and building a strong culture within your workplace. But it just, for me, it starts with conversations. It starts with, and it's crazy how like an unfortunate situation, a tragedy, forces us to have these conversations. These should have been happening already. And that's what bothers me. That's what gets to my core is like, why aren't these happening? Why don't we do these things? But we're doing them. And I'm extremely proud to say like we're doing them in the classroom already. We're already upstairs talking about these. We set aside time the other day to discuss it before Chief Wright and General Wolfe, put out their thing. We've encouraged the students to view that. I've had some powerful moments with my instructors, and I'm fortunate enough to have a really small team here where we have that trust and respect and everything, where I feel open and confident in talking to these about these topics with one of my instructors who is a female African American. It was tough. Like, don't get me wrong. Initially, I didn't know how to approach it. I didn't know. Growing up in the Northwest, and maybe it was just a blind eye that I didn't see racism exist. I haven't seen it firsthand necessarily in the Air Force either, as to what Kaylin spoke to some degree like that. But these conversations have to start with us in a group right here, the leaders setting the example. Chief Wright and General Wolfe did an amazing job yesterday of setting that tone. And that was a part of our conversation this morning with my instructors is the leaders have to set the example. And if they're not having these hard conversations or these conversations in general, they're not even that hard, then, the rest of the force typically won't follow. But the fact that they're doing it, I see them all over Facebook, all over Air Force Quarantine University, and all over social media and everything, where these conversations are happening within our units and within our flights.
I think one of the differences between good teams and great teams is this: great teams have an improve mindset, whereas good teams and bad teams have a prove mindset. Like when you're trying to prove something to somebody, it's usually a defense mechanism for something. Whereas when you're approaching things and improving, then it's an internal, like we're looking at how we can get better kind of thing. And in this context, I think now is not the time if you belong to a team to prove how you're not discriminatory or prove how you're not racist. It's the time to look at improving your ability to have conversations, improving your ability to talk through things with people, improving instead of proving that you're not, right? Because great teams are always trying to improve versus proving something.
No, that's a great point, Paul. And I think that's the acknowledgement of what's happening is the first step. And you're right. If you're trying to give a list of reasons about why you don't fall into a certain category of being discriminatory against people, then I'm not sure that's a helpful position to be in right now. I don't think that's going to get us anywhere. And if we can get past that and then actually start listening to people and hearing what their actual stories are, it's eye-opening. It's absolutely eye-opening. And then not placing a judgment upon that, that will shut it down just as fast. If you try to rationalize what's happened or trying to focus on what's the aftermath of this situation, it's just not. It's two different conversations, and you won't have the good lasting improvement conversation if you start from that position. It will just be right. That's where the circle just keeps on going and keeps perpetuating itself.
Chief, you said something earlier that I really liked. You talked about one of the ways you can really look at a great team is when the leader is not present or when the leader is gone, the team is still performing. And I actually wrote that down. That was actually one of my talking points before we even did our podcast with you. I called it silent progression, is removing key people and there is still movement happening. And you kind of hit that on right at the very beginning. And Chief Wright is the power, the fuel, I think right now behind all this. And he's been the fuel behind huge discussions in our Air Force. Yeah. And I like that. I think he's done so much already that as he continues to, as we get closer to his departure, we know that our discussions are still going to be happening. This isn't like he's doing it. Like when we're talking about like good versus great teams, and if you take that leader out of the play, things could stop. We're not there. That's not going to happen. I can tell that's not going to happen because when he departs, I know those discussions are still going to be happening. We're still going to be breaking down barriers, stigmas, and we're going to be continuing to grow together. And but at the same time, like I don't think we would have gotten here without him being brave and starting the conversation hard like that.
Yep.
Oh, go ahead, Chief. Did you have...
No, agreed. No, agreed. And he's going to be a hard person to replace, and but somebody else will come in and pick up the mantle. It always happens, right? All of us will go away at some point. But yeah, he's certainly done an amazing job in getting these conversations going and leading us down some new ways of thinking and some new ways of doing business. I certainly appreciate what he's done for us, no doubt.
That's awesome. Chief, we're gonna wrap up, but one thing we want to ask all of our guests is, what's their developmental diet? Like we talk a lot about, hey man, what diet are you on? Like meaning what kind of food are you taking? But what's your developmental diet? Like what are you putting in your brain on a regular basis?
So my strategy involves a lot of reading, and not just corporate leadership checklist books, right? A lot of different kinds of things. I just read a kind of a short book on Secretary of State. Oh my gosh, now his name just totally went out of my brain. Secretary of State under Nixon. Help me out here. I know you guys know your history.
Quick Google search.
Yeah, it must have been a really meaningful book, but I can't remember the guy's name. But talking about diplomacy and
Kissinger.
How Kissinger, the book's actually called Kissinger on Kissinger. And it's a kind of a autobiography interview book about basically about how we opened the doors to China in the early 70s, and how we did that without making Russia mad, and also ending the Vietnam War at the same time. Like it's like, you think there's a lot going on now. Go look at some of the things that our country has been through before. So we're going to be okay. Rome is not burning, right? Everything's going to be all right. But as far as the diet goes, it's about balance. It's about spending time doing the things that you like to do, and not being over committed to your organization. I think we've got a disease of that going on in our Air Force. I'm committed. I'm all in. I'm 100%. But I also like to not look at my phone for a day or two, right? And go do something. So your recharge, you don't just run your phone for 3 or 4 days without plugging it in, right? So you got to plug yourself into something that's not Air Force related. So I do a lot of reading. I really try to watch what I'm eating. I think that's super important. I think people ignore that way too much. I think we have that's the next conversation we could have about what people eat in our Air Force, right? I mean, it's pretty staggering, the amount of bad food we've got going on out there. I think people could see an unbelievable change in the way that they feel every day if they would do something about that. So I try to keep the sugar out and the carbs super low, and try to get the exercise I need. But I tell you, it's hard. Like right now, I'm not in the gym as much as I need to be. Right? There's just a barrier there that I can't seem to get enough of that going on. So I'm always working on something. there's never going to be a time where you're going to be like, it's all good, everything's perfect. If you start feeling that way, man, talk to somebody else. For me, I can just go ask my wife, hey, what am I doing wrong? She'll tell me really, really quick.
Laundry list of things.
They all
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Things that I need to fix. But yeah, I mean, be doing something that is opening up your mind. I tell you, my reading list is going to change based on current events. I need to know more about these issues. I think I have a pretty good idea on stuff, but every time I think I know something, I read something that I'm like, wow, that's an eye opener. If you guys aren't following Jason Womack, Jason Womack, WOMACK, I'll give him a plug on this. Jason works down at Maxwell. He's a civilian, but he has got an excellent reading list that I'm going to take a bite off of. Friend him on Facebook, and check out some of his stuff. He's doing a lot of Zoom calls and kind of professional development meetings that can be really helpful. He's at the tip of the spear down at Maxwell, trying to change what we're doing for officer PME, and a lot of that's going to probably bleed over into the enlisted side. I listen to the people that know what they're talking about. I mean, your former command chief, Josh. If Josh puts something up there, man, I go look at it. I digest that and try to figure out where I can fit that into my narrative or into my daily routine. I go to the people that are doing this. I'll tell you guys, I haven't done any of this because of me, right? Like I'm not, haven't had any of the successes I've had in my career aren't because of me. It's because of other people that have taken the time to sit me down or just said something that I latched onto and ran with. I feel like I'm the most unoriginal guy on the planet. I don't have a lot of original thoughts myself, where I'm just coming up with these brilliant ideas on my own. That's not happening. I'm going with the experts and the people that are out there living in this world with us, and just taking their thoughts, trying to learn from them, and then maybe twisting a few of my own personal experiences into what's going on. And it seems to be working out to just listen and have some obedience. And when my boss asks me to do something, I just got to do it. Right? It's just it's pretty simple process. But yeah, that's kind of my diet is just getting it done on a day-to-day basis.
Good.
Nice. All right, Chief. Well, hey, I can't thank you enough for today. We know that you're a very busy guy. I've always known that. But Chief, like the times that you give us and everything to really connect with you and to have these hard discussions, but more importantly, you always teach us something. And I think we're all very grateful that I hope that we provide something to you as well. We're grateful that you are our first guest. We hope that this sparks a lot of other great Chiefs and a lot of other great visitors soon, but it means a lot that you took the time today. So we're thankful.
Yeah. Hey man, this is going on my bio, like first guest, on
accomplished podcaster,
world famous podcast, first guest, that's going to happen. So hurry up and get it famous, so that can be legit. Right.
You got it, sir.
Awesome.
All right, Chief. We'll talk.
I really appreciate you guys. I really appreciate you guys having me. It's been, it's good to talk to you guys. I can't wait to, get these travel restrictions lifted so I can actually see all of the faces of the Icemen and Icewomen up there at Eielson, and you can meet the new boss, and we can start being together again, not virtually all the time.
Yes,
can't wait for that to happen.
Yes, sir. Yeah, we
awesome.
absolutely agree. We're looking forward to it as well. So we hope you're doing well down there. We hope your family's doing well. Tell the boss we said hi as well, and we'll see you. We'll hope to see you soon, sir.
Yep, absolutely, guys. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Chief. Bye.